My fat liberation is not a trend. That's what we're going to be talking about today in this video. Thank you so much for clicking on it. So that is based off of this title from a article that was written for Cosmopolitan. So again, it goes on to say, my fat liberation is not a trend. As a plus size influencer, I can see that we are backsliding into open hatred of fat bodies again. But I won't quiet down about what radical fat acceptance means to me, by Natalie Craig. And so Natalie, this is her right here. I went to her Instagram. So she goes by Natalie in the Sky. And if you look on her profile, she's a blogger. It says short, chunky, and stylish. She's an editor for United, an educator, and a writer. And if you go through her Instagram, it's very aesthetic, very much so, it's clear that she's very stylish. I think she has a nice style. She has some photos with her partner, a lot of style pictures. So let's go into this article and see what it's all about. So this was uploaded on January 15th of this year. And so let's go on to read the article. So it says, I'll never forget the first time I felt carefree and unstoppable in my fat body. I was 22 and seconds away from stepping in front of the camera in a pink checkered bikini on the Steve Harvey Show for a segment on plus size fashion. Appearing on national television in skimpy swimwear with no time to prepare could make anyone self-conscious or nervous, but not me, not anymore. So this was 10 years ago. So it was in 2014. I had spent the last 6 months discovering body positivity and writing about the fat acceptance movement from my college newspaper and my budding fashion blog. Both were a revelation to me. The fat acceptance movement had been working for decades to advocate for fat people's rights and educate the public on anti-fat bias, while body positivity, which promotes an affirming view of bodies of all shapes and sizes, had been gaining traction on social media through the work of mostly brown and black women. Finally, I felt free from obsessively idealizing thinness, which had kept me in a cycle of self-hatred and low esteem since second grade. So the first part of that article is interesting to read because it's clear that she has been part of the body positivity movement, not since the beginning, but as far as like the modern beginning, I would say that she's been around, you know what I mean? She's been part of it for a good amount of time, because like for me, I didn't even really hear much of this until probably 2018 was when I first heard about it. Obviously probably a little bit later. I'm a dude. It clearly was not targeted towards me, but it was something that I had not really heard much about until about that time. So she's been doing this for a while. She's been around for a while. She's seen things change, and it is interesting because, as I've stated before in a lot of my videos, there are a lot of good things in the body positivity movement that I think can be really positive for people, and that can really help people out a lot. And so I can understand why someone that would be in her position would feel very called to the movement, because talking about just not hating yourself, I think is a good thing for anybody, right? And so there are positives there that clearly kind of pulled her into it. But moving forward, I thought I was destined for a life. I thought this was the life I was destined for as a fat woman, always chasing a small body and never feeling good enough. So before I found these movements, I spent my free time counting calories, microwaving lean cuisine meals, and overperforming in every relationship just to prove I was worthy. I got a doctor's note to join Weight Watchers before I was of age, and even underwent hypnosis for weight loss when I was 19. Again, I can relate to those things for sure. I had plenty of people that tried to help me lose weight when I was younger. I was almost part of a study for kids that got the lap band before they were 18. I went to a few meetings for that, and I was very close to doing that. So again, I can understand what it's like to have parents, adults, people in your life that are worried for you and they want to help you out. And so the things that they do maybe are not the most savory, but again, usually it's because they care about you. At least for me, it was. I know my mom, the only reason she tried to do that stuff is because she cared so much about me, right? But moving on. But from the moment I stepped into the Steve Harvey set, everything I did was to prove the world and myself wrong about fat people. I rebelled against the notion that plus-size women should hide, quiet down, settle for less, and lose weight. Instead, over the next decade, I wore what I wanted, dated, fell in love, enjoyed food intuitively, traveled the world, climbed the career ladder, and grew my fashion blog to reach thousands of women across the world, changing the narrative of curvy bodies in fashion along the way. I was owning my fat body and using it to take up space, and it felt incredible. So it seems that she definitely profited or had a lot of like there was a lot of good things that happened to her because of fat acceptance or body positivity being pushed to the forefront, right? She was able to grow all of this stuff. So clearly, from what I'm reading by this, there was a pretty big financial incentive for these things to continue for her. And in general, I'm sure she believed in it, but I think I would be remiss to not mention that stuff because it's clear that there has been there was a very large, financial incentive for her to be part of this and for this to continue growing, right? Moving on, it says, body positivity and the fat acceptance movement didn't just change my life, it loosened the grip of unrelenting beauty standards for millions of women. Eventually, the fashion and beauty industries took note too. As brands launched size-inclusive campaigns in 2017, Ashley Graham became the first plus-size model ever to land a Vogue cover, while Paloma Elsesser starred in Glossier's Body Hero campaign. I'm saying all those words wrong, I'm sure. And in 2022, plus-size model Precious Lee was gracing a Jimmy Choo ad in a bikini and walking for Versace and other luxury brands. So those are all good things, but it's very interesting to me, someone that is outside of the fashion industry and just has I really don't care. It's interesting to me because I like that stuff is cool, but I'm just like, okay, well, like, is that really that big of a deal? I don't know. Maybe I'm ignorant, and maybe it's just because it's just not for me. But it's interesting because as we go on in this article, it seems that this is a very big part of her she attaches it feels like she attaches success based on how much this fashion industry, this industry accepts body positivity, which I think is really interesting because I would think that you would just want to separate yourself from this industry that has, by your own words and by a lot of other people, have shunned, put you down, made you feel less than. Like, why would you want so bad to be accepted by this thing that has been so obviously against you in the past, right? But again, that's just my opinion. Jimmy Choo in a bikini and walking for Versace and other luxury brands, it all felt transformative because plus-size models were usually relegated to the back pages of department store catalogs, if that, and now they're being used to advertise luxury. We were finally making inroads in a notoriously brutal industry, or so I thought. But the writing is on the wall and in our timelines and For You pages. Thin is creeping back in. I've noticed a palpable shift from my perch as a plus as a plus size fashion influencer. Just look at the 18 billion views on TikTok for heroin, thin bodies, most of them glamorizing the prevailing aesthetic of Kate Moss 90s once again. I think that this is definitely true, but I feel like this is more the pendulum effect than anything. Like with anything in like media and stuff, right? Something will get really popular, and as that gets really popular, the opposite will also get really popular because this thing is so popular. People are like, I don't like that thing, I want to do this, and then this thing gets really popular, and people are like, I don't want it. It's like always happening, right? So I think in the 90s, in the early 2000s as well, it was very much so super thin, rail thin, tiny, skinny. You want to be skinny, and then now recently it's been more thick, and then plus size. That's what's in, and then again, people have gotten used to that, so the pendulum is swinging. I don't think that this is anything that is not normal. This is something that happens often, in my opinion, at least. It's not like the unrealistic beauty belief of nothing tastes as good as skinny feels ever truly left, or that we achieved true full liberation. We live in an era of face tuning after all, but at least there was a blissful, albeit brief moment when people didn't say their most toxic fatphobic thoughts out loud. Again, this feels like it feels kind of out of place based on everything else we've been talking about. Like their most toxic and fatphobic thoughts out loud. I don't know. That's just me. It's starting to become increasingly apparent how many people and brands were simply using body positivity and curve washing as a zeitgeisty marketing ploys. If it's any indication of what's to come, many influencers who this is where it's like, interesting, who previously used body positivity to build a career and land brand deals are coming right out and telling us how they really feel. Over the past few months, I've seen some of my fellow fat content creators getting weight loss surgery or clamoring for newly FDA-approved weight loss drugs like Ozempic, Wegovy, and Mounjaro. It's painful to see people carelessly abandoning the body positivity and fat liberation movements that they built communities on, diminishing the change they've worked so hard to catalyze. So this is very interesting. So it feels like when I read that, this feels like almost an opinion piece based on people leaving body positivity, which we've been talking about a lot. And I think that this is something that I've always said I'm not surprised that this is going to happen, because when we talk about most of the people that are very into the body positivity space, they are usually relatively young. And as you get older, things start to become more serious. Your weight, your health, a lot of that stuff is affected a lot more seriously as you get older. And it seems like a lot of people are taking their own personal decision to be like, hey, I am no longer healthy. It's just interesting that that's never brought up, right? Why most of the time are so many people, quote unquote, leaving body positivity? It's not because they're just like, oh, you know what? I've made enough money off of this. Now these stupid fat girls, they listen to me. Now I'm going to make money off the skinny girls. That is never the case, ever, right? It is almost always started with something serious happened and I needed to make a change. And I realized that the things that I was saying, I no longer believe that. And just because someone, like, it's almost like I've said before, if you consider yourself body positive or, a plus size creator and you talked about that in a positive way, it's almost like you're not allowed to lose weight, or even, and especially you're not allowed to talk about losing weight. You're not allowed to talk about the negatives that maybe came along with your weight loss, because that's seen as anti-body positive, anti this movement, which I think is just patently ridiculous, because there are serious issues that can come from that. And talking about that, there's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't make you anti anything, right? But it's starting to become increasingly apparent how many people and brands were simply using, I already read that part. Over the past few months, I've seen some of my, so we read all that. There was a blissful, all right, we already read that. I felt betrayed and gutted as I watched a viral TikTok from a prominent plus size influencer saying, I don't care how trendy or cute or fun it seems to be fat. It's not all it's cracked up to be. I actually feel kind of guilty for being part of this movement. Now, you can feel bad about that, and you can feel like, man, that's really a bummer, but you can't sit here and say, if that's how someone feels, they're allowed to share that. They're allowed to say that, and you shouldn't feel that you have to attack that person or make an opinion piece because you disagree. I mean, you can make an opinion piece, but that person is allowed to say that, and there's nothing wrong with them saying that, in my opinion. I knew this video would encourage people to be even crueler IRL and in line, and I didn't have to wait long for my prediction to come true. This just feels wrong. So it's blaming, this is how I feel. This feels like it is blaming someone that decided to leave the fat positive, body positive community and share their thoughts. This feels like it is blaming them for an increase in people being mean, and that doesn't feel fair to me. That feels really mean in my opinion. On the heels of the shift, I've noticed more hate comments on my own content than ever before. While I'm putting together an outfit, making pizza with my boyfriend, or working out, men and women feel entitled to let me know I am that I should lose weight, stop promoting obesity, and even die, all because I am fat. Now, just because I'm saying that I disagree, I obviously disagree with all of that stuff as well. If you see someone that's fat on the internet and you don't like it, just leave them alone. You don't need to leave a comment. It is cringe and you are a loser. It's easy to limit my exposure to hate on social media with comment filters and simply putting my phone down, but attending New York Fashion Week in the fall was another sobering reminder of the current backslide. During my first New York Fashion Week, I'm assuming, in 2019, I was electrified by Curvy Con, a 3-day event specifically for plus-size women, and the numerous runway shows that showcase dazzling, diverse fashion for bigger bodies, including 11 Honoree and Christian Siriano. I'll never forget model Tess Holliday studding down the catwalk for Chromat in a white dress with a fitted bustier that had sample size written all over it. A bold clapback at an industry that had long ignored the average American woman, who, to be clear, is plus size. I felt so optimistic about the future. Again, so it feels like this being a part of Fashion Week, being a part of being a part of this sphere seems so important, and I don't see why it's so important to you. I feel like it is putting way too much power in this industry that if they don't care about you, just, I think, move on, make something that you are proud of, that other people are proud to be a part of. Fast forward to 2023, and according to the Vogue Business Size Inclusivity Report, less than 1% of the looks shown during Fashion Month in New York, London, Milan, and Paris were worn by plus-size models. As I walked into shows in New York this past fall, I noticed photographers pointing their cameras down when I came their way. People even questioned my right to be in these spaces. Like clockwork, the fashion industry has decided that my body was just a trend. One season, thigh gaps are all the rage. The next, it's big butts, where our bodies and the fact that we refuse to hate them just a passing fad, only valuable as long as they were profitable. Yeah, I mean, that's how the industry works. That's why I don't think you should put so much stock into it. A few weeks ago, I was presenting a lecture about inclusive styling to faculty at a college with a notable fashion design program. I talked about how body positivity helped evolve fashion and styling beyond just dressing figures for flattery. Shockingly, I was met with incredible pushback from the faculty who insisted that women not only want to, but should dress to slim and shrink their bodies. I couldn't believe these were the attitudes shaping the next generation of designer. How will fashion evolve if fat-phobic rhetoric remains in the classroom? I can't really say anything on that because I was not there. I would like to say that these shifting ones haven't bothered or affected me. They haven't? I don't know. It seems like they have. I understand that not everyone feels comfortable embracing their bodies, especially after being accosted with a different message for the majority of their lives. But the backlash I've personally experienced recently and the noticeable public shift away from fat acceptance over the past year has made me question myself. Do I need to go back to being quieter and smaller about what fat acceptance has done for me in my life? I don't think that you actually made that question. I'm gonna be honest. But I do know these movements weren't a mere moment for me. They permanently reshaped how I feel and think about my body for the better. And I'm not going to abandon their principles just because fashion and pop culture are once again valorizing smaller bodies and valorizing smaller bodies to the exclusion of everything else. I recently read about Maggie Irvy, a 15-year-old girl who has been put on Victoza, an early predecessor of Ozempic and Wegovy, to give her a shot at a typical life as a teenager. It brings back memories of being the only teenager in a Weight Watchers meeting, and I'm reminding how difficult it can be to exist as a fat young person. Kids are mean, unrealistic body standards are pervasive, and there is nowhere to hide in the age of social media. I wish I could go back to the younger version of me, that sad and scared kid who constantly reminded that her body was nothing to be proud of, and tell her to celebrate and cherish the vessel that would carry her forward. There is much more to life than trying to adapt the one body we get to fit the latest viral hashtag. Regardless of what's next in fashion, beauty, or weight loss drugs, I know one thing for sure: my body and the freedom I finally found within it will never be reduced to a trend. And so that is the full article. I thought that this was interesting because it seems that more people that are in the fat acceptance or health at every size sphere, I think they are noticing the, I guess you could say, writing on the wall, or just more and more people leaving. Now, I understand that there have been really positive and good things that have come from body positivity, and there have been strides that have been made that are good. But also, there have been some negatives that are showing and why people are leaving. And I think it's important to understand that. So, I don't know. I thought this was an interesting article. I am really curious to hear what y'all think about this. Why do you think this article was written? What are your thoughts on it? All of that stuff. I would love to know. But thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time. Peace.